out our shirt on Teespring.
The deaths of George Floyd and Tyre Nichols ignited a firestorm of debate about policing in America. These tragic events have forced the nation to confront uncomfortable truths about systemic racism and police brutality. These tragedies brought to the forefront two terms: defund the police and police abolition. Both movements have gained significant traction and have sparked widespread discussions. While often used interchangeably, these concepts are distinct. Defunding the police generally means reallocating funds to community services, whereas police abolition calls for a complete dismantling of the current policing system. Understanding the differences is crucial to navigating this complex and emotionally charged issue. Misunderstanding these terms can lead to confusion and hinder productive dialogue. This essay will delve into the nuances of defund the police and police abolition. We aim to dissect these movements to provide a clearer understanding. We will explore their historical context, tracing back to the civil rights movements and earlier police reforms, examine arguments for and against each approach, and how these arguments have evolved over time, and consider their impact on public discourse and policy. These movements have influenced legislation and public opinion in profound ways. The goal is not to advocate for one side over the other. Instead, we seek to present a balanced view. Rather, we aim to provide clarity and foster informed dialogue on these critical issues. By doing so, we hope to bridge gaps in understanding. By understanding the nuances of these movements, we can better engage in constructive conversations about the future of public safety. The conversation surrounding police reform is multifaceted and demands careful consideration. It involves various stakeholders, each with their own perspectives and experiences. Let's begin by tracing the origins of these movements and the events that propelled them into the national spotlight. Understanding their roots will help us appreciate their current significance, and the events that propelled them into the national spotlight. This journey will provide a comprehensive overview of the ongoing struggle for justice and equality in policing. The calls for police reform are not new. They echo through decades of struggle and resistance. They are deeply rooted in a long history of systemic racism and police brutality against marginalized communities, particularly Black and brown communities. This history is marked by countless incidents of violence and injustice. The deaths of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014 and Eric Garner in New York City that same year sparked nationwide protests and fueled the Black Lives Matter movement. These tragic events became symbols of a broken system. These events laid the groundwork for the Defund the Police movement to gain traction in the years that followed. Activists and community leaders began to push for a reimagining of public safety. The death of George Floyd in 2020, however, proved to be a watershed moment. His murder, captured on video, shocked the world and ignited a global movement. The global outcry and sustained protests following his murder brought unprecedented attention to the issue of police violence. People from all walks of life joined the call for justice. Defund the Police became a rallying cry, demanding a fundamental shift in how we approach public safety. It called for reallocating funds to community services and support systems. The movement gained even more urgency with the death of Tyre Nichols in Memphis in 2023. His death reignited the conversation about police reform. Nichols' death at the hands of 5 Black police officers shattered the narrative that police brutality is solely a racial issue. It underscored the need for systemic change. It highlighted the systemic issues within policing itself that require urgent attention. The movement continues to push for meaningful reforms and accountability. Defund the police is often misunderstood and misrepresented. It does not mean abolishing the police entirely. Instead, it calls for a reallocation of funds from police departments to other social services better equipped to address the root causes of crime. Proponents of defunding argue that police budgets have ballooned over the years, while funding for essential social services like mental health care, affordable housing, and education has been slashed. This imbalance, they argue, has led to police being called upon to handle situations they are not trained or equipped for, often with tragic results. Defunding advocates believe that investing in community-based solutions is a more effective and humane approach to public safety. By addressing issues like poverty, homelessness, and mental illness, they argue, we can create a more just and equitable society that prevents crime from happening in the first place. While defunding seeks to reform the current system, police abolition goes a step further. envisioning a world without traditional policing. Abolitionists believe that policing is inherently flawed and cannot be reformed, as it perpetuates systemic issues. They argue that policing in America is rooted in white supremacy and colonial violence, and that true safety and justice require dismantling the system entirely, replacing it with community-led initiatives. Abolition is not simply about getting rid of police officers. It's about creating new systems of accountability and support. It's about fundamentally reimagining how we address harm and ensure community safety, focusing on prevention rather than punishment. Abolitionists envision a society where resources are redirected towards transformative justice, restorative practices, and community-based solutions that address the root causes of violence and inequality, such as poverty and lack of education. Abolition is a long-term vision that requires a fundamental shift in societal thinking and structures, moving away from punitive measures. It is a radical proposal that has sparked both hope and skepticism, challenging deeply ingrained beliefs about safety and justice. While critics argue that it is unrealistic and dangerous, proponents see it as a necessary step towards creating a truly just and equitable society where everyone feels safe and valued. Section 5. The Case for Reallocation. Proponents of defunding the police point to a wealth of evidence supporting their arguments. Studies have shown that investing in social services, such as mental health care, substance abuse treatment, and affordable housing, leads to a decrease in crime rates. Furthermore, they argue that police are ill-equipped to handle many of the situations they are called upon to address. Mental health crises, for example, are often met with force rather than compassion and understanding. By diverting funds to mental health professionals and social workers, we can ensure that individuals in crisis receive the appropriate care and support. Reallocating funds also allows for specialized responses to specific community needs. For instance, instead of relying solely on police to address homelessness, cities can invest in housing-first initiatives and wraparound services that provide long-term solutions. Section 6. Concerns and criticisms. Opponents of defunding the police raise valid concerns about the potential for unintended consequences. They argue that reducing police budgets could lead to an increase in crime, particularly in marginalized communities already disproportionately impacted by violence. They also express concerns about slower response times and a decreased police presence, which could make communities feel less safe. Furthermore, they argue that defunding could lead to an increase in private security in wealthier neighborhoods, exacerbating existing inequalities. These are serious concerns that must be addressed. Proponents of defunding acknowledge these concerns and emphasize the importance of careful planning, community engagement, and a phased approach to implementation. They argue that simply shifting funds without a comprehensive plan could be detrimental. Section 7. Public and political discourse. The debate over defunding the police has become heavily politicized. While the movement initially gained significant traction, public support has waned in recent years. Some attribute this to a rise in crime rates in certain cities that implemented defunding measures, although the correlation remains a subject of debate. Politically, the issue has become a dividing line, with progressives generally more supportive of defunding and conservatives largely opposed. The Biden administration has distanced itself from the Defund the Police slogan while emphasizing the need for police reform and investment in community-based solutions. The conversation surrounding police abolition is even more polarized. While it has gained traction among activists and academics, it remains a fringe concept for many Americans. Critics often dismiss it as unrealistic and dangerous, while proponents argue that it is a necessary long-term goal. Section 8. Navigating the nuances. It's crucial to recognize the nuances within these movements. Not all proponents of defunding the police support full abolition. Similarly, there is a spectrum of views within the abolition movement regarding the pace and scope of change. It's also important to acknowledge that these movements are not monolithic. They encompass a diverse range of voices, experiences, and perspectives. Engaging with these diverse perspectives is essential for fostering productive dialogue and finding common ground. Ultimately, the goal of both movements is to create a safer and more just society for everyone. While their approaches differ, they share a common goal of challenging the status quo and demanding a fundamental shift in how we approach public safety. Section 9. Conclusion. Two paths, one goal. Defund the police and police abolition represent two distinct approaches to addressing the deeply rooted issues within policing in America. Defunding calls for a reallocation of resources, while abolition seeks a complete dismantling of the system. Both movements stem from a long history of police brutality and systemic racism. They reflect a deep-seated desire for a more just and equitable society where everyone feels safe and protected. The debate over these approaches is complex and emotionally charged. It requires nuanced understanding, open dialogue, and a willingness to consider alternative perspectives. The future of public safety depends on our ability to move beyond simplistic labels and engage in meaningful conversations about the role of police in our society. By listening to diverse voices, considering evidence-based solutions, and working together, we can create a future where everyone feels safe and respected.